One thing that certainly is a mix of incompetence and malice, ladies and gentlemen, though, is the fact that this is causing a lot of problems, and not to mention the outside threats as well. And we've got a good few of them to go over now. So tragically, in France recently, as we'll go through this in a moment, one instance which I want to go through in France first. Remix News reported on this. A Chechen migrant, makes you think, what is a Chechen migrant doing in France? Stabbed his ex-wife to death in France on the 4th of November. This was yesterday. Right on the streets of Nice in broad daylight whilst she was holding their 2-year-old daughter. I think there's many people of our people that would think to do something so heinous. There would be a few, obviously, don't get me wrong. What was this person? What was a Chechen migrant and his family doing in France? The little girl watched her mother die. He then nearly killed his 17-year-old daughter when she intervened to protect her mother. She remains in hospital with life-threatening injuries, but he was already on trial 3 times for domestic violence. All ended in acquittal somehow. The area which the murder took place is the Moulins, which features an extremely high population of immigrants, including a large Chechen community that is reportedly in quote-unquote shock. I'm not too sure about that, ladies and gentlemen, because there's a short that keeps coming up on my feed every now and again. It's from the Sean Ryan show, and I can't remember it's the guy that is the SEAL Team 6 operator that I believe it is the guy that pulled the trigger on Bin Laden, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember his name. His name escapes me. He's been on Patrick Bet-David. He's been on loads of platforms. But he has a really thing story in the shorts that come up and in the clips that come up on my feed all the time about a Chechen. He does this really thing story about a Chechen and how they when they were fighting them, I should say, that you could tell who they are because it was obviously a white Muslim. You could tell them they're quite different in terms of their ethnic makeup, and in terms of the way that they are. The way that they shout, they sound quite different or whatever. It's audible that you can tell it's a Chechen. And he says they're the kind of people that if you get overrun, you save a bullet for yourself, because otherwise they're going to basically tear you limb from limb. You know, they kind of enjoy that brutality. And that kind of comes across when you see that he seemingly had no problem offing his ex-wife in front of their 2-year-old daughter. Whilst she was holding her. It makes you think, do we want anything to do with people from this area of the world? At what point do you have to look at the collective, not in the way you'd look at any kind of barbaric collective punishment, which is, for example, what people argue was going on in Gaza with innocent Gazans getting caught in so much of the shelling and everything like that at the moment. But at what point, for example, do you look at like the Gazan population or the Chechen, all these populations where you hear these stories and think, maybe it's just better if we don't have them around? Not kill them, slaughter them en masse, nothing like that. But at what point then do you think, maybe it's just better if we, you go that way, we go this way, and just, pleasantries every now and then or whatever, respect the authority of the other in their quote-unquote territory. At what point do you look at this and just see that you have to stop giving the benefit of the doubt? Because I see that a lot with what seems to be, at least with regards to this, the Muslim population in particular, where now you have to be extremely skeptical. We've seen how there's been quite a few examples circulating now of young British men who are converting to Islam. A lot of them seem to be ginger for some reason, these converts, which is, slightly odd. I suppose they needed something to fill the void, right? But a lot of them seem to be, red in the head. And then that red in the head translates to terror attacks against their own people. Been a few examples of that now. They're called Anglo-jihadis, they're calling them. at what point again, we have to look at not just a collective in this instance, but a religion and say, do we want anything to do with this? Are we gaining anything from this? At this point, given everything that we've seen, given what we know now, given that there's so much information out there dispelling a lot of the myths that they were peddling, right? I would argue not. And this transpired recently that in France, I believe this is like a holiday destination of, I don't know how to say it, Ile d'Oloron. I'm not sure how to say it. It's a French island of Ile d'Oloron. I hope I'm saying that right. They have now had a suspect in his 30s shouting Allahu Akbar as he was detained, as two people are put in intensive care following a driver seemingly intentionally plowing down several people on this French holiday destination island. Seemingly similar stuff to what we saw, I believe it was on London Bridge, right? One of the bridges in London where I believe it was a car or a van mounted the curb and tried to take out as many people as they could. They seem to have another example on example of this stuff happening. At what point do we say that we just can't take the risk anymore?
Breaking developments to bring you regarding a situation in France. This is the island of Oloron, just south of La Rochelle. It's a tourist island, and we're hearing that a driver rammed a vehicle into pedestrians and cyclists, leaving two people in intensive care, according to the Interior Minister. The driver arrested by police, according to the Interior Minister. Around 9 people are thought to have been injured. That's according to the mayor of Oloron, talking to BFM TV. And in those comments to BFM TV, the suspect is said to be about 30 years old, and it's reported that the suspect shouted Allahu Akbar when arrested. Le Parisien newspaper reported the same details, adding that investigators were looking into the possibility of possible mental disturbances regarding the suspect. We understand from French media that France's anti-terrorism prosecutor's office isn't in charge of the inquiry at this stage, but they have...
Yeah, it said something about ongoing mental issues or whatever. Could we just argue that is Islam at this point? I know you're not supposed to say that, but that's why it would go back to the root. You don't see Jews plowing into crowds of people shouting Allahu Akbar. You don't see Christians plowing into crowds of people shouting Allahu Akbar. You don't see Zoroastrians doing it. You don't see Yazidis doing it. You don't see, all manner of other people do it. You don't see Sikhs doing it. You don't see Hindus doing it. They don't see Hindus charging into groups with, although there seem to be a bunch of demon worshippers and stuff like that. You don't see them charging in with their chakrams, is that what they're called, the circular disc things that they've got, mowing down a bunch of people while saying for Ganesh or whatever. It's a distinct group of people seemingly do this every single time. Now, see, there might be more to come out of this. It might be false. Who knows? We'll see. It's a pattern, though, ladies and gentlemen. Circle, circle, square. Circle, circle, square. It's a pattern. What are we supposed to do? Clearly, the biggest thing is, tolerance, diversity, all of this stuff hasn't served us. And then you think, maybe that's why our ancestors, European ancestors for these people and so on, were so hardline, were so resistant to Islam and literally fought crusades, fought preventative wars, right? The stand at Vienna and so on. They might have that I think I might have the place slightly wrong. All of these battles that we've had to keep this ideology out of our lands, and then we just bring it in en masse thinking that it's changed. Thinking that it's going to be any different. It's literally, the definition of insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, as the saying goes. But now we Islam kept coming back and coming back to Europe. There was unspeakable atrocity that spawned the Crusades and so on. And then we just opened our doors to it and thought that it was going to be different. What the hell were we thinking? And now we're getting to this now where incidents like this are happening so often. So often. And you look back through history as well. World Trade Center bombing. 9/11, obviously there was potentially information being withheld by other foreign governments and stuff like that, right? But ultimately, the motivation for the attacks, right? Lee Rigby, 7/7, Manchester Arena, and a bunch of them went and plowed down a bunch of people on a bridge in Manchester. I believe there was a pregnant woman that was attacked at knife point as well. I believe they're trying to kill her, stab her in the belly. I can't remember the exact case. I might have that slightly wrong. And now this case in Doloron or whatever it is. Not to mention the amount of anti-Christian attacks commonly perpetuated by these people. I think in the last couple of years, Mark Horton, I believe, did a Freedom of Information Act request recently, revealing that there have been thousands of anti-Christian attacks on churches. But you don't see the same in the other direction. What are we supposed to do? At what point do we look at this and think, maybe we're going to have to, treat this at the ideological source, not just with these fringe cases, because these things don't seem to be letting up. They seem to be getting worse and worse and worse. And the rest of the world is laughing at us or is, holding pity on us. Another terror attack was foiled recently in Glasgow. Terrorist has just been jailed. His name is Shazad Khan, who's hoarding gunpowder, ball bearings, and metal pipes. Right? Attempting to do some kind of mass casualty incident by the looks. He's been given 30 years, ladies and gentlemen. That's all he got. Seemingly was 30 years. 3 years, not 30 years, not 30 years, 3 years. According to this post, he got 3 years, not 30 years. Let me correct this record right now. He didn't get 30 years, seemingly. I suppose we'll see now when I play the clip. I haven't seen it yet. He got 3 years. What kind of deterrent is that?
Shazad Khan sparked a large-scale emergency service response when police discovered gunpowder, ball bearings and metal pipes within his family home in Glasgow's West End. Police had first been alerted to Khan after intercepting a package which was found to contain illegal cattle prods. A raid then found explosive materials, which experts say could have been used to make improvised explosive devices. Today at the High Court in Glasgow, Khan admitted to the charges. His defence argued that there had been break-ins in his basement and that he had thought of how best to keep his property secure. Jailing Khan for 3 years and 11 months, Lord Scott said, "It is frankly baffling that you thought that this was an acceptable response," adding, "It is just as well for you that the authorities intercepted these deliveries before you attempted to set the booby traps. Had you done so, there is every possibility that you would have killed or maimed yourself, a member of your family, or some entirely innocent member of the public." Searches of Khan.
Another key example of not only the problem, but also the justice system not doing what it's supposed to. You have a terrorist on your hands, right? And you give him 4 years. It was closer to 4 years than 3 in the end. What kind of deterrent is that? Especially when you look at Labour's early release scheme and you just think, who won't they let out at this point? There's heavy speculation at this point, and it looks to be true. I've yet to see anything directly corroborating that it is true, but there's a good chance that it is, based on where the evidence is pointing, that the person who killed Wayne Broadhurst, I believe his name is Safi Dawood, 22-year-old Afghan, that butchered Wayne Broadhurst in the street as he was walking his dog, was somebody now who could not be named when somebody was recently arrested after being released under Labour's early release scheme, which, by the way, never applied to thought criminals, never applied to people who put things on social media. Now, Lucy Connolly didn't get that treatment. No, Wayne O'Rourke didn't get that treatment. Tommy Robinson didn't get that treatment for showing his documentary. Peter Lynch didn't get that treatment. But potentially, they let out somebody who was already in prison for knife crime out onto the street on the early release scheme, which was put in place by a foreign Muslim female, right? The foreign Muslim more important than the female part. That later then went on, potentially then later went on to kill one of ours. A council binman who was walking his dog. Could there be a greater betrayal than that for Wayne Broadhurst? Could there be actually a greater betrayal? Think of anything in his family, everything we're seeing right now is demonic, satanic. You see evil runs the world. I think that's why you see so many people coming back, maybe aside from Terry Moslem, right? Coming back to some kind of faith and thinking, holy shit, there's so much evil in the world running the world right now. That there's such evil, there must be such good, at least in proportion to it. Then that gets people asking really fundamental questions. Does seem, had we had a justice system fit for purpose, that Wayne Broadhurst would still be here today, because that Afghan would not have been on the street that day had justice been done. But yet the Afghan's still here. Shabana Mahmood, Keir Starmer, all of these other disgusting traitors are still here. But Wayne Broadhurst is not. There's no words to describe the treachery, is there, ladies and gentlemen? Have a think about this example as well, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about, again, should we just look at some people, in the world and maybe think, do we want anything to do with them? Maybe we can have a look at the dookie dunking, Indians, for example. I don't say that with any kind of intolerance or whatever. They have their festivals, but maybe we don't exactly have a lot to learn and have a lot to gain by integrating with those whose summation of their sacred religious festival is literally, having a poo fight. It's literally having a poo fight. Because an Indian man recently was on a British Airways flight. He has now been jailed. He's 34 years old. For repeatedly groping a 12-year-old girl to, quote-unquote, test the waters, as GB News reports. Name is Javed Inamdar. He had apparently, I'm going to bring this up on screen for you, ladies and gentlemen, because you need to read it for yourself. There's actually, I put out a meme on X recently of seeing the news of the last couple of days, or seeing the news of just today, that day when I posted it. I think it was today. And it's the meme of the screaming marmot. I'll bring it up on screen for you now. If you haven't, you would have seen it. But reading the news today has been like that screaming marmot, right? Indian man, Javed Inamdar, alleged, get ready for this, ladies and gentlemen, that he had mistaken the girl for his wife when he assaulted the girl on the flight from Mumbai to London Heathrow on December 14th last year. Why are we only learning about this now? I get it. It's prejudice in trials or whatever the hell excuse they use and whatever else. Inamdar also claimed he was actually asleep when he grew up a child. Oh yeah, you know when you just casually you know you're in the middle of your sleep, you're out you're dreaming or whatever, and you just casually assault a child. I mean, Javed is like, oh yeah, we've all done that, right? Funny enough, no, we all haven't. No, we all haven't. We don't just casually be groping children in our sleep. The young girl woke up around midnight screaming, "Get the away from me." It sounded like he was sleeping. Before immediately alerting cabin crew, the 34-year-old told a flight attendant he may have confused the young girl with his wife. So he's either saying that this is a particularly mature-looking 12-year-old, or maybe that says a lot about his wife, doesn't it? Some people, it seems, they, depravity and shamelessness just knows no bounds, some of it. But are we really going to buy this? Are we really going to buy this, ladies and gentlemen? Let's have a look a minute. Let's have a look where they are. Here we go. Referring back to this graph, ladies and gentlemen, it's not actually as bad as I thought, in terms of I thought these people would be placed higher. Maybe that's my own prejudice showing. But again, it's possibly not exactly surprising when you look at India's placement on the list that I showed you before, which in this instance is 11.5, which is just below half. It's down here. If I zoom in just a little bit, there it is. So you can see it there. Just below Nigeria and, what used to be Rhodesia. I'm not going to, it'll always be Rhodesia. It'll always be Rhodesia. You're sleeping and you just casually fondle a 12-year-old. Yeah, me neither. Me neither. This is the guy, by the way. Just so you can make sure again. This is imagine you're asleep, you're a 12-year-old girl, and you wake up and this is, groping you. Just, waking up as a 12-year-old and being groped is, awful. Absolutely awful. Just, there's no words to describe how awful it is. Ugh. No matter who's doing it. But again, maybe there's just certain people we just be better off not having around us, not having in our communities. Another one, ladies and gentlemen, we've got more context for you on the assault that happened in Cardiff recently, which I reported on before. This is why, ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing how many examples that have come out literally just again in the last couple of days, right? Just again in the last couple of days. Why, again, I'm reacting to this like... This is CCTV footage, very brief CCTV footage, showing... I'm going to play it on mute because it's just music in the background. Remember the young girl in Cardiff that got strangled and assaulted under a bridge, right? This is the video of her leaving the club, and you can just see how insidious it is right from the get-go. I dread to think how many times she may have been accosted by this guy before, right? How many times she, might have seen him trying to linger near her or whatever, or maybe it was just a case of he tried to make a move, was rejected, and then she tried to leave. But you can see here the nature of what is going on when he follows her out, and this is him following her. So for those of you listening, it's... as soon as she leaves, the victim is obviously kept pixelated, but you can literally see the attacker comes out not long behind her, is always in eyesight of her, and is speed walking to catch up with her, never more than a few feet away. And obviously then he grabs her under a railway bridge, tries to, assault her, strangle her. Just again, never ever should have been in the country. Never ever should have been in the country. So again, you're seeing there how, sadly, how you got to keep your head on a swivel nowadays, no matter what, because depravity is at an all-time high. just in today's society anyway, because we've decided that that's what we need to pride. That's what we need to pride, right? You can't have any kind of social stigma towards things anymore, because that would be deemed as insensitive or all manner of shaming or whatever. Maybe think that certain things were shamed for a reason. But this is a case of somebody who really had no business being in the country, like the male said. He's a quote-unquote Syrian asylum seeker. As far as I'm concerned, he should be back in his Islamic paradise, which he was supposedly fleeing, that Jolani is now established, because of the evil dictator Assad that was there before. That is seemingly, if the conventional wisdom was to be believed, who he was fleeing from. Why is he in Cardiff? Why is he not in Raqqa with his buddies? Either way, does not... Oh. You can tell my voice is going a little bit now with all the talking I've done. I ran out of drink a little while ago. He should not be in my capital city. They had no business being in my capital city. None of them do. None of them do. But sadly, it seems that Wales is losing its capital city, and it's also losing its secondary, well, you could call it secondary capital city as well, or one of them, in Swansea, which is, from what I can see, basically the Islamic, multicultural capital of the world. See, one of the things that Joe Marsh said in one of my interviews, and I can corroborate a lot of what he said, because there's one time I went down for an interview with somebody in the Swansea area, and what happened to be coming out past the school as the school was closing, as home time was coming. And you could be forgiven for thinking that it was a foreign school, as in, like, all of a sudden you've been transported to a foreign country. You could be forgiven for thinking that. Which is why I think the census in many ways in Wales is a lot worse, a lot less accurate than what it would be made up to be. It's hard to tell sometimes when you're in the rural areas, the valley areas of Wales, when you don't see these problems firsthand. It's difficult to guess, right? It's difficult to see. You only have to go on the data that you have, but I don't think it's the most accurate. I don't think it's the most accurate at all. Sorry, I thought you had somebody coming down the stairs. In Swansea, take a guess at the name, ladies and gentlemen. Swansea University student, my alma mater in this instance, has been jailed for 15 years for threatening a teenage girl. Swansea University student who raped a vulnerable teenage girl and later tried to intimidate her into dropping her complaint has been jailed for 15 years. I'm gonna bring his image up on screen. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to guess what his name is, and I'll tell you now. Have a guess what his name is, ladies and gentlemen. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I got good news. If you guessed Mohammed, ladies and gentlemen, you would be 100% correct. Good stuff. I think my microphone massively clipped over the limit there a good few times. I am sorry. Hopefully the audio will clear that up. The audio mixer will clear that up. Mohammed Rayhan, or Rayhan, however you say it, has been jailed for 15 years for assaulting a teenage girl. Swansea Crown Court heard that the 22-year-old Mohammed Rayhan of Phillips Parade in the city centre was a third-year software engineering student when he targeted the girl in summer of 2024. He groomed her before carrying out a series of assaults, including 2. When he told the victim, this is a real kicker, ladies and gentlemen, when he told the victim his actions were hurting her, when the victim told him, when the victim told him his actions were hurting her, he chillingly replied, "Good." Do you really still think, ladies and gentlemen, that everyone around the world thinks the same that we do? Everyone around the world sees the world the same that we do? How we're all just going to get around the campfire and sing Kumbaya? Yeah? You still think that? I think it'd be hard for you to think that after today, but hey, so each person's wall takes a different amount of hammering, going head first, splattering your cranium into it before it eventually collapses. The abuse left the teenager traumatized. In a statement read to the court, she described how she no longer felt safe going out alone, constantly looked over her shoulder in fear of being followed, and panicked whenever a man came near. She felt like a different person from the girl she had been before encountering Raihan. Yeah, no surprise. And he had no business being here. He had absolutely no business being here. I don't know if it says whether he came over as a foreign student or whatever, whether it was like a foreign exchange student or whatever, or he came over like a foreign scholarship, something like that. And he contacted her after she went to the police, made threats in an attempt to force her to withdraw it. It was good that she stood firm, later gave evidence in court, which was key to securing his conviction. So however he's here, after he has served his sentence, bare minimum, he should be sent back to whatever shithole his ancestry is from. That's where he should be sent back to. Sent back to whatever shithole his ancestry is from. He has no business being here once his sentence is done. Who knows, he might only end up serving 40% of it. Might be out this time in, 2031. You certainly hope not. But if they can potentially do it to Wayne, they can do it to anybody, can't they? I suppose we'll see. Just need to go check something a sec, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to make sure the fire was still lit. Was all. Just had to go quickly put a new log on there. Was all. Don't tell Ed Miliband he's taking that log burner, multi-burner from me, from my cold dead hands. So who's Wales' like net zero minister? Do we have like a net zero minister? They'll be taking that burner from me, from my cold dead hands, let me tell you. Just keep thinking about, ladies and gentlemen, we're in a still civilized at the moment with regards to the populace, right? They once civilized, once understanding of themselves and their community's population, homogenous population in that way, in Wales, in Britain, right? I think about, do we have really anything to gain via, as we've seen, this weird multicultural diversity experiment in this only land that we have to call home, especially with many, many people in the world? I would argue not. They don't make a good case for themselves necessarily either. Because think about this now, with how many people who would be thinking like this, ladies and gentlemen, might be coming in through our stupid open borders, right? Apparently this is a call with Muslim Brotherhood leaders. Now, I don't know how they're doing this. Maybe they're on some like weird chat program that's specific to the Middle East or Asia or whatever. Maybe they're doing this through Zoom or whatever, weekly terrorist checking call where you do it with like maybe a business mentor or something like that. How are you doing on, sales of machetes, and how are you doing on your behead quota today, or this week rather? Muslims have been, openly talking about in this call how they plan to conquer America and Europe and destroy Western civilization. Doesn't sound very integrated to me. Doesn't sound very, kumbaya, let's all get sing around the fire and celebrate our differences and, enjoy the glorious diversity. Sounds that many people, and this was encapsulated in Bushra Sheikh's recent post on X. You can go find it. It won't be linked down below, but you can go find it. In celebration of the Mamdani election victory in New York, she was ecstatic, and she literally used the words, ladies and gentlemen, "A Muslim has taken New York City." These people, when it suits them, when they get a perceived victory, they put on they have this big Freudian slip, this big mask slip, right? The mask keeps slipping. It doesn't even stay on, right? They don't have a mask, but some of them, they try to keep one on, and the mask slipped, and they give away their war fighting ambitions And they say things like, we've taken the city, we've taken New York City. That indicates to you, ladies and gentlemen, you and me, that these people think that they are in a war. What do they call it? Jihad, struggle, implication, war. We would do well to remember that. We would do well to keep that at the forefront of our minds with pretty much every interaction at this point. We are in so much danger, we can't afford not to. And they are so seemingly open about it, yet we still arrogantly think we know better not to listen. It's literally there for us.
700 years of our trial to conquer Europe by force failed. They did something wrong, very wrong. They tried for many years to conquer Europe through wars, only wars.
This is the soft Islamic conquest of the West. Basically, what the Islamic and again, I'm an Orthodox Muslim. What we couldn't do in the last, say, 20 years, now the West is doing it for us for free and even paying for it.
Allah permitted them to live off the infidel while they are subduing them. So it had sort of a parasitic type of attitude where they can live off of the host country, where their goal is to eventually eradicate the host culture and supplant it with Islam.
700 years.
How Islamophobic? That last guy at the end. Parasitic. How they feed off the host culture until they supplant it and take it over and destroy the host, whilst feeding on its resources the whole way. What they couldn't do for 700 years, we are doing for free. Can we, not us, right? Because I know you guys, for the most part, I'm preaching to the converted here. Can we as the government, but we as like overall society, not? Can we not be chickens for KFC? Can we not be turkeys for Christmas? And think about it. You have so many atrocities that have happened because of this. Unspeakable atrocities happen because of this. Yet somehow people still don't see it, and they spell it out for you. This is where tolerance gets you. This is where weakness gets you. This is where not having principles gets you. Because make no mistake, he said he was an Orthodox Muslim. Say what you want about them, about their principles, about their worldview, about all this stuff, right? They are deeply principled. That's one thing they are. And principled people will always win over those who have none. It's principles that give you direction. It's principles that light your path, right? Principles are general things that you adhere to, or guiding lights that you always have, that, you know, they're not specific to a situation. You might have the principle of always being honest. And in this case, you might be confronted with a sticky situation. You're tempted to lie. But if you have one of the principles, you're always being honest. It's like a guiding light in a cloudy situation, in a mist, right, of not knowing what to do, in a mist of ambiguity. Principles will guide you. Say what you want about these people. They are extremely principled. Their principle is to destroy us, destroy our nation, enslave us, right, if we won't convert, and get us to acknowledge our second-classedness whilst we are subdued and humiliated, belittled. That's what the jizya is. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen. You can go find 1 or 2 episodes ago. You can go find my X post where I screenshotted the exact things from friggin' Sunnah or Quran.com, whatever it was. I believe it's Sunnah 429, if I'm not mistaken, but I might have the exact citation wrong on that one. So don't quote me on the exact citation, unless I'm right, in which case I always meant it. I always knew it was that citation. But this is why, it's a kind of parasitic relationship again, because as our nation, as our culture is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, theirs is getting stronger because they're feeding off us. And this is where Welsh man, Welsh woman, right? Welsh they thems, if you want to do that, right? Okay, this is the one time I'll entertain your bullshit if it means you're going to listen. You have to choose now, and please don't be like one of the silly, stupid females in New York making the perfect case for repealing the 19th by voting for exactly this. And not to mention all of the other weird trans stuff and outright communism. It's going to come down to us or them. That's a sad reality. It's a sad reality. It's going to come down to us or them. At least in regards to this one issue. Religion is one of many factors that motivates people, right? Religion often gets to the most barest, elements of human nature, right? And human being. It's not just that. The gangs were also racially based, for example, operating on a system of racial hierarchy, in which case the girls were seen as, less than because of their race and because of where they come from. For all of the talk about anti-racism, you don't hear about it for any of the justice for the girls, do you? Despite the fact that these are some of the most racist people you'll ever meet. Even if they're very good at projecting a different exterior to you on the outside and perfectly in line with their taqiyya practices. Taqiyya, by the way, meaning they can lie to you to further political aim. That's literally one of their principles. One of their principles, ladies and gentlemen, is to lie to further political aim. But we have good reason to believe they're not lying here, ladies and gentlemen, because if they were lying, it would not be furthering their political aim. If anything, it would be giving us more impotence to go against it. It would actually be slowing their political aim, which is to expand the caliphate. So they're actually just being honest. That's how open and that's how confident they feel, which is a sign of our weakness. Maybe we should do something about that. Obviously, there's not really much any one person can do, obviously. But you need to remember this with your attitude on a day-to-day basis. But not only that, the next time we're at the ballot box, it might be our only opportunity. You need to start understanding how valuable certain things are now. Like the Second Amendment, you might be staunchly against guns, but you're not going to be staunchly against guns if there's an angry mob of Muslims at your door. Or if there's an angry mob of anybody at your door. You're not going to be so against guns then, are you? Right? If you're being attacked, if you're being followed, you're not going to be so against pepper spray or batons or guns then, are you? And if you are, then you're either just very sadly not exactly the sharpest tool in the box, or you've been just indoctrinated to a potentially insalvageable, that's a word, insalvageable degree, to where you just have so little care about your self-preservation. The only thing is, you having so little care about your self-preservation when it comes to how you vote and everything like that, not only affects your self-preservation, it affects everybody else's as well. Is why the legislation where people were not allowed to own firearms or own weapons or anything like that anymore, people's decisions affected everybody. And that's why it's been such a catastrophic decision. Not hard to understand, ladies and gentlemen, about how, again, you remove any kind of deterrent, physical deterrent in the form of the boof boof, the bang bang, And then all of a sudden the government starts arresting you for social media posts and arresting you if you try to go and rescue your daughter from a gang. Funny how that works, isn't it? And then also saying how much of a bigot you are and you need to accept the colonization and your ethnic replacement and so on. How good it is for you. It's good for them because they see it as voters until the point where it's going to come and it's going to eat your politicians as well. So that's the best thing, ladies and gentlemen. The end game will be that we will get taken over by this parasitic culture and all other elements of parasitic cultures if we don't stand up for our own. But our weak, traitorous politicians will sell us down the river, right? Sell us down the river for their own political gain in the short term. After we are done, there's no recourse for us because we've been stabbed in the back by our representative with the power to change things. When it gets to a point then when these people will operate in their own sectarian interest and foreigners will operate in the interests of foreigners, make no mistake about it, the time will then come for them as well. But they think that it won't. But it will. Or at the very least, they'll have opportunity to get away. They'll flee somewhere else. They'll flee to a second home or a holiday home somewhere and live out the rest of their days in paradise, whilst what remains of us will be subjugated and enslaved and a hated minority, and many of us will sadly not be here anymore. Is that a future you want for your children and for your grandchildren? If not, it's on your duty to stand up now. Even if it is just in silently reinforcing these attitudes every single day. Really putting your mind to the grindstone and sharpening your mind. If you're one of these people that everything that I've said to you right now is if I'm reading the gospel to a demon, then listen to what I've said, see what you've seen, whatever else. But then really go away and think about it. As you do, don't just dismiss it. And if you still think I'm wrong, fair enough. All right, whatever. If you've had a good think about it, then, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am wrong. I don't think I am. But at least go away and have a big, hard think about it. Think about it and stress test your ideas. Really question everything intently, with intent. Really, really hard about what you believe. And see if it stands up to scrutiny. It's not just about changing your mind. It's about sharpening your mind. Right? By subjecting what you believe. And I'm one of these people, I do this contemplating questions all the time that I'm pretty much in a constant state of headache. Right? I'm exaggerating, obviously, but because I listen to podcasts so much, because not just with podcasts, but like shows and stuff like that, a lot of political commentary shows, because I really spend a lot of time in this space, and I'm constantly asking myself questions, constantly trying to think through things. It's almost like I'm asking myself, repeat on multiple times a day, all times a day. Why do I believe what I believe? What is true? What is true? Try and rationalize this. Try and make my way through that. Solve this problem. All right. It's hard. It's hard. But it is really, really important, ladies and gentlemen. It's because we have to keep fighting for truth. And you have to fight for it. It's not going to come easy. It's not going to come easy. Like us now digging ourselves back out of this hole physically that we've gotten ourselves into. It's not going to come easy. And this is a particular story I wanted to go over. I think this is the last main example that we've got before we move on to a different thing about the media, which is where you get your information from, which is why I appreciate you guys tuning in for all of this. This is going to be a very long episode, obviously. We've only just about crossed the halfway point of the actual stuff that I've got. So this is going to be a long episode. This one I wanted to cover in particular, I was nearly brought to tears when I read this story. Not even necessarily because of what happened. Because you'll find a link down below. I'm not going to show the images here. But the victim in this case looks exactly like my father. It's a spitting image of my father. That made everything so much more real for me. On an unreal degree. This is a man named Terry McFadden, and he was in his 70s, and he was found dead in his home, I believe. In his 4-bedroom detached house he shared with his church-going partner, retired mental health nurse Jenny Holmwood, who was 75. and they rent a room to a young lodger. It appears to be this young lodger that took his life. He was stabbed to death. He was stabbed to death in his home shortly after he had been given the all clear from cancer. Police were called to the house yesterday after paramedics attending a call to an individual with breathing problems reported a man being violent and aggressive. And the person that has been detained has now been arrested and I believe charged. It's a 22-year-old by the name, something to do with 22-year-olds today. Moses Fernandez of Norwich has been charged with murder, and it says British national. Moses Fernandez, not exactly a stereotypical British name, which is why I instantly put out a thing on X, seeing anybody would see it, but I only usually get about 5 views or whatever it is whenever I share something. Who is this Moses Fernandez guy? Does anybody know? Because the initial Daily Mail article did not have an image. The BBC one did, which begrudgingly I had to cite the BBC. I don't want to, for reasons I'll get onto in a moment. This is apparently, according to the BBC, Moses Fernandez, 22-year-old who slaughtered a 70-year-old, or, well, man in his 70s, right? You'll see here, right, judging by his name, which in many instances would relate back to different places. I actually asked Grok to do. I sent the link to the article to Grok and it found the image, and based on his name, based on sort of where, migration patterns, he sort of took that into account as well, and how the world landscape changed over the last sort of 60 or so years. I can't confirm this. He's remanded and due to appear at Norwich Crown Court, I believe, tomorrow, because he murdered McFadden. He's been charged with the murder of McFadden on the 3rd. They've identified him as a British national. And it would appear that he would descend, according to Grok, his most likely pointer, which I'll bring this up on screen for you now, would be someone of what would be termed Indian descent, specifically Goan or Indo-Portuguese. So we will see if Grok's tabulation is correct. He did also say that it could be like Portuguese or Brazilian heritage, but the UK's demographics makes Indian Portuguese more probable. But it is an educated guess at best. And again, it just seems how many, if this is the case, obviously, how many more? And as I said, this one struck me quite personally, not because I have any relation to Mr. McFadden in particular, because I saw this article and I honestly thought it was my dad at first. I honestly thought it was my dad. And made it very, very real for me. Like, all the more. Like, I saw that and I realized I could be reading about my dad in the papers right now. Thank God I'm not. But it puts me in the frame of mind of, like, the adoptive, adopted children of that liberal, social democrat German mayor, Iris Stolzer, who again was tortured. That's about my 5th or 6th voice break in this episode, I think. Who was tortured by her adoptive daughter and seemingly by her adoptive son as well, both of African descent, both of whom now the taxpayer are having to take care of, it seems. But they put her in the basement, they tortured her for hours, and she was very lucky to survive. What was this guy's deal? What was this guy's deal? Again, they said they rented the room to a young lodger, right, which seemingly was Moses Fernandez. I believe the BBC article mentions that he was staying at the same residence. I'm just trying to make sure and corroborate that before I say that definitively. Yeah, Moses Fernandez, 22, who lived at the same address, has been charged with murdering Mr. McFadden on 3rd of November. He just had the all clear from cancer. I don't really know what to say, to be honest. Like I said, I just can't get over the feeling, of reading that article for the first time, honestly looking down, I thought I saw my dad and that I was about to, when I saw the headline, obviously, and I was like, hang on, what the fuck? And thank God then that it wasn't. But you see things like that sometimes and it makes it a lot more real, And realize, oh, holy shit, maybe we are in a fight for our very existence, and maybe the lines do have to be drawn on things that make us a bit uncomfortable. If you enjoyed that clip, then make sure to go on over to the Voice of the Valleys X page at VOT_Valleys on X. We're also on Instagram at Voice of the Valleys. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon. Godspeed.